scars remind me to appreciate the days I don't have to.
Hey, Jim, how are you today? How's your morning?
What's new with you, Michael?
Yeah, okay, so this is a kind of a beginning of the next episode, the next podcast, and we were talking about more like Ike Clanton, and then we were talking about the trial, and I was trying to remember, Jim. It seems to me that there is. Oh, well, let me finish. I'll go back and finish the story. Me and Jeff went looking for Ike's grave. So, you park at one place, and then you have to go half a mile into the brush in a certain directions. And we found, and I've got pictures, maybe I've got them on my phone, but pictures of me at what is thought of as being the remains of Peg Leg Wilson's house, and me sitting on the remains of what used to be his house with my dog. And I guess he probably took that picture, but we went and we found Peg Leg Wilson's house, so therefore we knew we were close, according to my phone, according to Terry Ike Clanton.
What I saw on the internet, yeah.
Yeah, so we go off looking for these basically grave sites that were, according to this book and Terry Ike Clanton, they were marked. And we looked, all over, and we just couldn't find them, according to where Terry Ike and his grave finder, who wrote the book about where these famous graves were, Ike being one of them, just wasn't there. We couldn't find them. I had gone to the mayor of Tombstone, and I said, listen, if I find Ike Clanton's grave, would you let me bring it back and bury him with his brother and his father at Boot Hill? And he said, I'll tell you the same thing that I told Terry Clanton. Like, if you can prove they're his bones, you can bury him here. And nobody had been buried there for a long time now. I have a very, very good friend who is Dashiell's godfather, who's a homicide, not only a homicide detective, but head of the homicide division in Tucson. So therefore, I would have had access to somebody coming out and kind of supervising a, I don't know what you call it, exhuming, when you exhume
exhumation.
Is that what it's called?
It's an exhumation.
Thank you, Jim. That's why you're here. I would have been going,
exhuming, when they exhume this stuff.
But Jay, who's Dashiell's godfather, put me in touch with a woman who the police department uses, and I talked to her on the phone, and she said, well, if you find a body, I can get like the DNA from it or whatever, and to prove that it was Clanton or not. Now, Clanton's sister is buried in the graveyard in Bisbee. And I think there are plenty of Clantons around that you could go like, okay, well, you could eventually prove, if you found a body and you got the DNA off that body, if that was Ike Clanton's body or not. And if I could do that, if I could prove that to the mayor, then I could bury him at Boot Hill. And I thought, what a great adventure. and it would bring all this sort of attention back to Tombstone, and because Tombstone, Jim, and maybe I think that you're pretty aware of it. People might not realize that Tombstone is a pretty big tourist attraction now. Before our movie, the movie that I was in, Kurt's movie. Andy Vanya's movie, before Kurt's movie came out, I think the Tombstone was starting to kind of wither away. I think that it was really getting to a place where, people just weren't that interested in it anymore. And it was
it had been something of a tourist attraction in earlier years.
Sure.
Because I remember reading once back in the 50s, when there were really only the three major television networks, how many Westerns there were on television. There were 20 Westerns a week on television in the late 50s and early 60s. And of those, 5 or 6 dealt with the subject of Tombstone or Wyatt Earp. So there had been a huge, public focus on Tombstone through the late 50s and 60s. And so I think that kind of helped make the city something of a tourist attraction. But by the time the 90s rolled around, then, that was all kind of a faded memory. So it could very well be true that the town really was, on the slide at around the time the movie got made. I don't think there's any question that the movie reignited interest in the actual location of Tombstone.
There's no doubt about that. And when you go to Tombstone, every other shot's got pictures of Kurt and Bill, and like it.
Is that where you bought that Johnny Ringo soap?
No, that was Ringo a joke. Soap. That my brother makes soap, and and he. No, that was just kind of a joke that my brother put together for me one time for Christmas, and he makes soap, and it's good soap. It's really good soap. It's not something that I normally do, but it's just something he does in his spare time. He makes soap, and he made some soap. He called it the Johnny Ringo soap, and I think we had a slogan that was something or he had a slogan that was. No, I think it was my slogan. Once I found out he had a soap, and I said, I'll see if I can. Jennifer had a store in Bisbee, and I go, I'll take a dozen of these, and I'll put them in the store. And I think that we had a slogan on the soap, and it said, "For dirty boys and girls who love them," something like that, or for dirty girls and boys who love I've forgotten what it was, but that was the soap thing. What the fuck was I talking about, Jim? You brought up this damn soap thing.
Well, we're talking about Tombstone.
Oh, yeah.
When you go there.
When you go to Tombstone now, like so much of it reflects the movie that I was a part of, and it's gotten. You can go up there on weekends now, and you feel like you're sort of in Disneyland. You'll get a lot of people on Saturdays and Sundays and 3-day weekends and stuff like that. I haven't been there for a couple.
Do they do reenactments of the gunfight on a daily basis there?
Oh yeah, not like an hourly basis.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it's. All of that is kind of, I think, somewhat unhistory related.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure if I've ever really stuck around to watch it because, if it was me and I was watching it, I'd be screaming, and it didn't happen like that. Fuck Wyatt Earp. But somebody called me about 2 or 3 months ago and said, Ringo's is it Johnny Ringo's? Ringo or Ringo's? Ringo. Johnny Ringo. Ringo's, there's a bar there. And it's a nice bar, a nice big bar, a nice, really nice place. They might serve food too. Somebody called me up to tell me they were selling it if I was interested. I'm like, I think I'll probably not. I'll stay out. I'll stay out of the restaurant.
The best thing for me would be to open up a bar or to own a bar. Yeah, put me there.
Yeah. But anyway, so me and what was our friend's name? I've forgotten already.
Jeff,
Jeff and I. So we go down there. We're looking around, and we can't find anything. We can't find these, let alone finding Ike's grave, which was supposed to be like had an X on it.
Yeah.
Unlike the other graves that had names and stuff on them, we couldn't find any of that at the coordinates that Terry Ike said that they
Did you
were.
find any remnant or trace of the cabin? Because it's supposed to be near.
Well, no, that's what I said earlier of Peglet. There's a picture. Now I should have, in between, I should have given it to Kalen, and he could have popped it up. But there's a picture of me sitting on it's basically a pile of rocks. But, according to lore, according to Terry Ike Clanton, which is probably about, that was what was left of Pegleg Wilson's house. And Pegleg Wilson is the guy, I guess, that Ike Clanton was staying with when the law finally caught up to him. Some bounty hunters, I think, caught up to him. Isn't that the way that you understand that, Jim? Some bounty hunters got to him. So, we went looking for the grave, and we got off to kind of a late start, and we spent a few hours, and we couldn't find it, and we realized that, it was going to be dark. It took us about probably 40 minutes to try to get to like Pegleg Wilson's house in that area and stuff, and I, we couldn't find it, so we're like, okay, well, we'll give up. And Jeff was kind of a heavy set guy, and we're fucking idiots. We didn't bring any water with us. We got nothing. We just got out of our cars and just started walking through the bush, like it's this way. And we think, and I think that with your phone, you can tell, or at least he could with his phone. He was really good with all the phone stuff, like north, east, south, and west, that sort of stuff. Oh, yeah, you could tell by the sun, the sun's setting in the west. Well, the sun was starting to set in the west, and we're like, okay, well, we better get back to our truck and back to civilization. And it's like, okay, I think it's that way. No, are you sure it's that way? I thought we came in from, wait a second, that mountain looks familiar. And like there's hill. We had just like stumbled our way into an area like we were like totally had no idea how to get out. So we go like, all right, well, I think it's this way. And we start walking in that direction. And he's got, again, with his phone, he was using it as almost like you would use a compass, but I forgot. I don't know exactly. Somebody said, again, one of the listeners could tell you how he was using the phone to try to figure out the direction back to the highway that we had pulled off of wasn't even a highway. First you went up to Morenci, and then you went through that town, which is a huge mining area. Man, they've taken that mountain down. Like, that's just a mining area that's just mined for. There's a big hole in the ground in Bisbee, but this area has just been mined and mined and mined, and it's still a working mine up there. And you go through that, and then you go another 45 minutes, sort of, again, I don't know, north, south, whatever, northeast, I think, towards New Mexico. And then you hit a dirt road, and then you drive on the dirt road for, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then you get close to the area and you get out. So you find Peg Leg Wilson's house, supposedly, and then we go looking for the grave. So anyway, we're fucking lost, man. We're two city boys, And now, listen, I knew that Jennifer knew what I was doing, and so. And there was another thing, too, is that there was water. There was running water nearby us. But like I said, it was getting late and the sun started going down, and we couldn't find our way out of there. And so we think it's that way. And so you would go to like a hill. And, you by this point, going through the brush, up and down hills, through branches, like it was tiring. It was tiring even getting there, and it was getting very, very tiring getting out. And like I said, I'm in reasonably good shape, but still, I mean, you go up, climb up these hills, and it was always like we'd go up, see a hill, and if we get to that hill, we'll be able to see. And we go up to that hill, and we get on top of that hill, and there would just be other hills around us, So we were like fucked, man. We were, and like I said, we didn't have any water or anything. Poor Jeff, he's passed on. Jeff passed away at an early age, and which is sad. He was such a nice guy. I did spend some time, another time with him up in the Bisbee area, but he was kind of a heavy guy. He started getting, like the white foam that starts like forming around your mouth. He started getting and then he fell down and he dislocated his shoulder.
Oh my God!
Yes. So he dislocated his shoulder, and then I think he thought he did anyway, and then he kind of popped it back in, one of those here, pull it, type of things. Okay, I think it's good, put a sling on it, and a half an hour after that, he's got all that white foam around his mouth. I don't know where we are, but I know that we're not in any real danger because I know there's water nearby, and I know that Jennifer kind of knows.
Somebody knows where you are.
Somebody knows what I was trying to do.
How many hours are going to have to go by before a search party locates by the river?
But my worst nightmare was, having to spend the night there.
Yeah.
Waking up the next, the weather was okay or whatever, but waking up the next morning, still being lost, and having some fucking cowboy just kind of walk up to us on a horse and basically look at us and say, "You two, those city boys." You those city boys? What's the deliverance? What are they saying? Deliverance? So you
sure got a pretty mouth.
Yeah, you the city boys that got lost? Yeah, okay, follow me.
City boys.
Yeah. Well, as it turned out, right before it got dark, we were able to see the highway, and that was my first trip up there.
I think you saw a telephone pole, didn't you?
Yeah, we saw a telephone pole first, yeah, and then that got to the highway. But then
how far from your truck were you at that point?
Oh, well, once not that far, like 1,000 yards. I mean, not that far, but
yeah.
Of course, we got to the street, and then to go right or we go left. You go that way, and I'll go this way, and whistle if you can see the truck. And it was really like Laurel and Hardy, Laurel and Hardy looking for Ike Clanton's grave. Anyway, he made it home safe, and it was quite an adventure for him, and I guess it was quite an adventure for me. Although I've had a lot of adventures.
He was a very sweet guy. His name was Jeff Poole, Poole, and he was a writer. He'd written some kind of science fiction books, but he also had a series of mysteries called the Corgi mysteries, Corgi being a type of dog. And he was publishing these books, kind of self-publishing them through Amazon, but they were getting pretty good readership. And he had just posted that one of his books had been accepted by a major publisher. And he was really thrilled with that news. And I was very happy for him because I had bought one of his books, and I was on kind of a list to get notices about when new things of his would be coming out. And he had just posted this, terrific news about a book of his being accepted by a major publisher. And then within a few weeks, we found out he had died of some, kind of ailment that cropped up on him all of a sudden, and he was gone. I don't think he was out of his 40s yet.
No, yeah,
still in his 40s. So he was a sweet guy, and his books are delightful. The Corgi Mysteries, Jeff Poole, Poole, and they're worth taking a look at. So, and then you didn't stop with that one trip, did you?
No, I didn't. I got to know a few people in Bisbee, and Jennifer introduced me to a friend of mine by the name of Luke. And Luke grew up in Bisbee, and he had a friend. He had two friends. One was named Chris, and the other one is named John. And they all grew up in Bisbee, so they were all like, I wouldn't call them country boys per se, but they're like real men. They're not like me. They're like, they know how to read a compass. They know which way is north. They know the area. They're builders and roofers and they're just smart guys who go out and as kids they used to go out and find turquoise and make turquoise and stuff. And they're three great guys. And I went out to meet Luke, who was a friend of Jennifer's. Jennifer had a friend she met, and she lived on a farm, and she was married to this guy. And she said, "Well, why don't you come out and like hang out with us?" And I did. And that's where I met Luke. And it turns out Luke is kind of I wouldn't call him a local celebrity, but he's well known in town for being, they have a thing that they do in Bisbee every year. This is how boring Bisbee, this is how boring Bisbee is, okay? Which I liked. I like Bisbee, so it's, and Doug Stanhope lives there, so it's not that boring. But they have a thing every year where they get like a huge rock, and I mean a big, it must weigh thousands of pounds, but it's a big rock, and it's on the back of a truck, and every man signs up, pays a fee. And I think the winner wins, all the money or something like that. They
win the rock.
Well, the competition is basically they got these big nails that they hold on to, and of course they've got these big hammers, and it's the competition is how far you can bang this nail into this rock. And people sit around and
you're not making this up, are you? This is actually a thing.
It's a big thing. Everybody in Bisbee turns out.
The big thing of the year.
It's a pretty big.
Let's go nail the rock.
Well, well, listen, it is a pretty big thing in Bisbee. I have the 3 years or whatever that I spent in Bisbee. The 4th of July, you'd get a group of people around a certain area to watch fireworks, and there would be a few hundred people there. But there's the time that I saw Luke join this competition where he's hammering a nail into a rock to see how deep he can get his and he had won the year before and won the year before that, and like a real man's man type of thing. But yeah, when I showed up for that thing, there were like 1,000 people there. People come in from different parts of from Tombstone.
How deep did you drive your nail into the rock? Because you have a lot of experience at nailing things. So how deep could you drive your nail?
I couldn't.
Did you even try?
Well, but that's who Luke is. Luke is that guy, and Luke's the kind of guy. He's reminds me a lot of Clint Eastwood. He's just a can-do kind of guy. If you ever get into trouble, Luke will figure it out. He's very daring and kind of a mountain climber and very strong. Obviously, he wins this thing every year where they but yeah, it's pretty boring there. That's one of the big events of the year. It's like Tombstone has. They have an event or two. I forget what they call it, but
Eldorado Days.
Eldorado Days. Yeah, that's Tombstone, and Bisbee's got its own history. Bisbee was around. Bisbee was when the stagecoach is held up in the movie Tombstone. I believe that stagecoach was either heading towards or coming back from.
It was going to Tombstone from Bisbee. Okay. It was a regular run, and it got robbed on more than one occasion.
Right.
And the robbery depicted in the movie was supposed to be that Bisbee to Tombstone.
Right.
Based on that one, because an innocent person did get killed in that robbery.
Yeah, and isn't that when you were talking about there was a posse that went out looking for those people and they ended up being dead.
Yeah, that was the one where actually Wyatt tried to get Ike Clanton to rat these guys out.
Yeah.
To help him locate these guys, and Wyatt said to Ike, "I'll give you all the reward money, and I just want the glory. I want to be able to make the arrests and pump up my credentials to be sheriff." And Ike said, "Okay, good, I'll do that." But before Ike could give him any help, the two guys who were responsible for the robbery got killed in some entirely different fracas. Well, it had nothing to do with the robbery.
I ended up going back to that site with Luke and two of his friends, like I said, Chris and John. And, these guys, it was a completely different story. So, we pull off, we do park where,
if I was going to go back, I would want to take a guy like Luke with me.
That's right.
Jeff, we love you, but you have your place.
If there's anybody that's as close to Cool Hand Luke as Paul Newman, Luke is pretty much that. Although he looks more like Clint Eastwood tall, strong,
Yeah.
good-looking guy, nice guy, beautiful wife. He's got 2 beautiful children. But anyway, I go out to the house, and I'd never met this guy before. Now we're pretty good friends, and very good friends. And if I had stayed in Bisbee, I mean, it was him. And I knew John, and I knew Chris a little bit through him, but Luke was really my friend, and then Doug Stanhope is from Bisbee, and those are the guys that I really. But anyway, I go out to he's got a ranch, or a farm. I don't know what it is. It's a big piece of property that he doesn't really use for farming or ranching. He's more of a builder. He builds things and oversees houses being built, and he does some roofing, and he can just do anything. And he's got like backhoes on his he's the guy that if you need a hole dug, he's the guy who's got a backhoe and whatever in his backyard that can go. So anyway, we go back there, and of course these guys find Peg Leg Wilson's house, what we thought was Peg Leg's, within, 10 minutes we're there, and within another 10 minutes we're looking for his grave. Again, looking for, and I've got these pictures in my hand of these grave markings and like names that according to Terry Ike Clanton, and listen, and to give Terry Ike Clanton, maybe I just didn't see him, maybe we just couldn't find him, but we went up there, and those 3 guys are real. I'd call them almost like mountain men. They really kind of knew what they were doing as far as being able to get to the spot, and then look for what was, I had the coordinates from Terry Ike Clanton, and we looked for about an hour and a half or 2. These guys had been they'd been up there with me, and they, after a while, they were like, yeah. They just wanted to go back and set up camp and party a little bit and go home. And that's what we ended up doing. I think that, trying to remember, I think I might have gone up there I went up there with Luke. It was on my birthday. It'll be 4 years ago. My birthday's coming up. It was my 65th birthday. We were up there, and it was me and Luke and Jeff. I don't know if I ever told you about that, Jim, but Jeff was up there, and Jeff's brother was up there.
Oh, really?
And we went looking for the graves again, and of course we couldn't find them, and I figured, three's a charm, and that didn't work out. And so that was the end of me finding Ike Clanton's grave. And
I sent those pictures to Kaylin.
Okay, all right. So
and you didn't see any of those things, any of those the rocks that were stacked, or the X marked on a rock somewhere.
No, we didn't see. No. And again, for all Terry Ike told me that the city wouldn't let him exhume. What was the word, Jim?
Exhume, yeah, exhume.
Exhume the grave, or the state wouldn't, or something. But when I talked to my friend and my, who's a police officer, he said, "No, it's just like that's not that land is not owned by anybody." Johnny Ringo's grave is actually on somebody's land that owns that land now, and they let people kind of go onto their land to look at Johnny Ringo's grave. But this is just out in the middle of the mountains, and So
It's on public land. Then?
public land, yeah.
Mhm,
And but anyway, we didn't find it, and that was that. But I always thought, Jim, that there was a that there was a there was so much kind of going on in Tombstone before the Earps even showed up, and I always thought that, like, it would be really interesting to really, because I don't think that you have to take these, what do you call it when you do it because it's a movie, you change.
Oh, dramatic license.
Yeah, I don't think that you have to take that much dramatic license to make. I mean, if you think about Tombstone 6 months before the Earp showed up, and the Earp showing up, and then the gunfight, and then them throwing him out of town and him leaving town. It seems to me that there's still like a lot there that would really be interesting. Now, you and I talked years ago about the fact that we could kind of create that Tombstone time with and start it with Josie. And I remember thinking, we were trying to think of, because you have the McClary brothers are there, the Clantons are there. At this point, I could play who they used to always call Old Man Clant. that would be the role that I'd play. We'd
yeah, you could. You
yeah.
could. The one that was.
We
You could be the founder of the feast. Huh?
Yeah, we might want to.
How much you might call the founder of the feast? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know. I just always thought there was.
I was always fascinated to learn how much money there was in Tombstone, how much wealth. Those silver mines were so lucrative. It's like money draws money. And when I heard about some of the comforts of modern life that were available in Tombstone, I was watching one guy who's a particularly good writer about Tombstone, Jeff Gwynne, wrote a book called The Last Gunfight.
Yeah.
I saw him on YouTube not long ago talking about Tombstone. He said, at the time of the gunfight, you could place a phone call. There was very limited service, but there were phones between the major saloons and the mine.
Mine, yep.
So there was the rudiments of, and there were gas powered street lights on one of the streets, the main street in town. You could eat oysters. Fresh oysters, ice cream. You could go bowling. You could play tennis. You could go to the library, which had the most recent newspapers from around the country. You could get modern information. You could go to the theater. There was, there were comforts of life for the folks who had money in Tombstone. They were making a pretty good life for themselves. So it was a real interesting mix that was going on there. At one point, was in Arizona.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When the mines were at their most productive, Tombstone
it was bigger than Tucson?
Absolutely. It got close to 10,000 people at one point.
Oh.
But I mean, Tombstone really as a town only lasted less than 10 years. Eventually those mines kind of flooded and most of the silver had been taken out of them. They were extremely lucrative mines when they were there, but and it was easy to find too. It was big, thick veins of silver, and they didn't have to do too much digging around to find it. It was more or less lying there, and after they'd extracted quite a bit, then the mines kind of flooded. So the life of the town as a productive entity was barely 10 years.
Yeah, and I remember talking to you about the relationship between Johnny Behan and Josie before Wyatt even shows up is sort of interesting because she comes from San Francisco. She ends up in Tombstone, probably at a brothel. Johnny Beehn meets her.
She was from
kinda-
San Francisco, and she apparently started out in a touring acting troupe.
Yeah, right.
Touring a Gilbert and Sullivan HMS Pinafore production that came to Tucson. But along the way, she apparently was also working in brothels.
Right.
And she'd apparently worked as Sadie in Tucson for a while. And Johnny Behan had met her when that production came through Tombstone. And he got all excited about her. And then she went back to San Francisco, and he came and got her and told her that he wanted to marry her.
Yep.
And brought her back to Tucson, supposedly as his fiancée.
Well, but he was already married, correct?
Well, he wasn't already married, but she wasn't his only fiancée. he had a number of them spread around town.
Well, when you have all that money.
Yeah, exactly. He's living large as the sheriff, and he wasn't really ever going to marry any of them. And she got a little tired of being, fiance number three.
Well, she was looking after Johnny. Johnny Behan had a child with somebody, and wasn't Josie looking after his child?
I think at one point, grew kind of attached to his kid. Yeah.
Yeah. That's.
But then she got a load of Wyatt and thought he was a pretty good looking, 6 feet of cowboy, and and they started having afternoon assignations at the birdcage in a private booth at the birdcage. So.
Well, I was thinking about the trial, Jim, and I was thinking about how unfair it was and blah 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 that the inquest and how unfair the gunfight was, and it wasn't a gunfight, it was a murder and all this sort of stuff. And I was thinking about how Johnny Behan had testified in the inquest against Wyatt and his brothers, and I started thinking to myself. He probably didn't have he probably had a dog in this fight.
He did have a dog in the fight.
This guy basically had come in and tried to steal his job and took his woman, and therefore
he made no secret of the fact that he was after his.
He might have seen the gunfight in a certain light,
Yeah.
I mean, according to the history as we know it, and what is in our movie is at one point, as the Earps were walking down to confront the.
That's true.
The brothers
right before the gunfight.
Yeah.
Behan tried to stop them.
Yeah. So there's no need for that. I'll let me go down. I can.
I can disarm them. I'll disarm them.
Right.
And
the
Earp's more and
like I said, I mean, one of the guys that they wanted to disarm, they just fucking smashed over the head.
Oh yeah,
they just
absolutely.
and
they brushed right past Behan when he said, "Hey guys, I can calm this down.
Yeah,
I can go disarm them if that's what needs to be done." But Behan knew that they were on their way out of town.
Has there ever been, Jim, any?
And then when Wyatt did start his Vendetta ride, he got warrants out for his arrest for some of the people he had killed. Wyatt did, and in the movie, when Johnny Ringo, the parts of the script that got cut out, but Johnny Ringo is riding with Behan and deputized by Behan to go arrest Wyatt. And that's when toward the end of the movie when Ringo was riding around chasing after Wyatt.
Well, but that was never in the script. That was never in the original script. That
okay.
That as far as I remember, I mean that is history, and the great Vendetta ride, as I said to you before, in the movie, what's his name comes on, does the voiceover and basically
Mitchum,
Mitchum talks about them cleaning up the West and, cleaning everything up. In fact, they killed 3 people, and one of them was Curly Bill Brocious, and another one was it Johnny Deuce behind or was it there was a Hispanic named
Rodrigo or something, was that? Or I don't remember him. Fuero,
something like that. And then there was the guy they did kill in Tucson the name
Stillwell, I believe.
Frank Stillwell, right. That was the whole revenge ride. The
guy, at the beginning of Tombstone when Ringo, your character, says, that's not what he said. Your Spanish is worse than your English.
Yeah.
The guy you're talking to, that guy is the third guy who was killed. That character. In the Vendetta ride.
The one I call an ignorant wretch.
Yeah. The one you call an ignorant wretch.
Spanish is worse than your English?
Yes, exactly. That's the guy who winds up getting killed.
So the revenge ride, or what's it called? The what ride?
Vendetta.
The Vendetta ride is all of it's 3 people.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And it's always taken on this Vendetta ride. Well, he went out and he killed 3 people. Like him and his brothers or whatever was left of his brothers, went out and killed 3 people. And, at that point, Jim, there never really has been, obviously, what was
Michael Rooker's character's name? Do you remember?
No.
Because he starts off as a cowboy and then he gets kind of disgusted and he winds up on Earp's side toward the end.
Can you look that up, Kaylin? Look up
Michael Rooker's Sherman something.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Sherman something, and he sort of starts off as a cowboy and then
in the movie.
Yeah, and that's sort of true. McMaster's, I think it was.
Yeah, Sherman McMaster's.
Yes.
Yeah. He's riding with Wyatt. He's one of the people riding with Wyatt in the Vendetta ride.
Yes. Yeah. But the Vendetta ride, like I said, is 3 people. So there.
Yeah.
So we go from that to when there are warrants then out for his arrest, it's because he's out killing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
He basically kills those
for killing Stillwell.
For killing Frank Stillwell.
Yeah.
So there's a like a murder warrant or whatever you call it, like hanging over him,
right.
And that's basically the end of him being in Tombstone. Correct?
Pretty much the end of him being a lawman ever.
Right.
Yeah.
And he goes from that area, and I'm talking about Wyatt now, He goes from that area to, does he go from there directly to, when and does the prize fight take place that he is the
I think
referee?
That takes place. I think that takes place in the after the turn of the century. From what I understand, he kind of roamed around the West a bit. He and Sadie hooked up eventually in San Francisco again, but he wound up in Southern California. And then during the Alaska Gold Rush, he went up to Nome, Alaska.
Yeah.
He was up there for a while.
Didn't find gold there either. Right?
No, didn't. Probably ran a couple of whorehouses, though, wouldn't you expect? You know? I'm sure he did. And he kind of, bummed around the West for the most part. And I think the gosh, I'm not sure when that fight occurred. I think it occurred in like 1906.
Oh well, the prize fight that he was refereeing. you know, the one of the fighters in that fight is a name that I was familiar with, like Willard or
Jess Willard?
Was it Jess Willard?
Or was it refereed in 1896? It was. He refereed a match between Bob Fitzsimmons and Tom Sharkey.
Bob Fitzsimmons, I think, probably was the champion. That name to me kind of remembered that. And then he was accused of throwing that fight, being the referee.
Well, Fitzsimmons was dominating the fight and appeared to knock Sharkey out with a punch to the jaw. However, Earp stopped the fight, claiming the punch was a foul below the belt.
Right.
So Earp handed the fight to Sharkey, basically. The crowd was furious, believing Earp had deliberately favored Sharkey, potentially due to betting. Many felt Earp's decision was a blatant fix. The incident significantly damaged Earp's reputation, with many questioning his integrity. Earp maintained that he had called the fight fairly, but his explanation was largely dismissed by the public. The controversy followed Earp for the rest of his life, becoming one of the most talked about episodes of his career.
And then he went to Alaska. Was that after that, Jim, or before that he was in Alaska?
That would be after that, because the Alaska Gold Rush didn't occur until about 2 years later in 1898.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
so he went up to Alaska, then came back, and then did that, and then he ended up living. Was it in Hollywood itself, Santa Monica, that he lived with his whore wife?
I don't know if he lived in Santa Monica, but
I don't know
but
why
I know
that
he
came
lived
to my mind.
Yeah, I know he lived in in LA, and he was hanging around movie sets. I think John Wayne knew him and said that he sort of based the way he walked on let's see. Well, he wound up dealing faro with Bat Masterson for a while after after Tombstone in Colorado. That was kind of interesting.
Well, I know also too, you had that picture that you grabbed that you said you wanted to.
I grabbed this picture just because I like photographs, and I've got some really nice ones. But this picture is a picture of Marlon Brando putting his makeup on in what's the movie where he plays the
on the waterfront?
On the waterfront. And it's really a photograph that I bought, probably 20 years ago, and really loved that photo. Just loved the photo because he's putting on his own makeup, and that's very. I'm not comparing myself to Brando, but I can relate to the fact of no. Let me put my fucking blood on. No more blood. That I could kind of relate to putting my own makeup on. But I bought this for myself years ago, 20 years ago, and I bought. I've got some other. Photos. I've got some. One.
Remember his famous speech in Waterfront in the back of the car to Rod Steiger.
Yeah. Could have been a contender.
I could have been a contender, Charlie, instead of a bum, which is what I am.
Right.
Instead of a bum.
Yeah. Anyway. That when I came here to do the podcast, and or originally when I came here, I probably to go to the very first Super Bowl party. Was that the first time I was here, Cameron?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that would have been like not this past Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl before. This picture somehow ended up in here. So I must have at some point given this to you.
So that picture was hanging up in our house growing up. And then when I left to get my first studio apartment when I was 18, I took that picture. I said, "Hey, can I take that picture?" You said, "Yeah, sure."
Oh,
take
yeah,
that picture.
yeah. Right.
So that was hanging up in that studio apartment, the apartment after that, the apartment after that, and the apartment after that. And then I finally moved in with my now fiance, and there just wasn't room for it. So
She's
it was
like,
sitting
"No."
in a
That goes.
Well, I had all my art just sitting in a storage unit. And so when we were, doing this podcast, I went to the storage unit and I saw that and I brought it out and I thought it'd be a nice thing to put on the wall over there.
Damn straight.
There's
I
that
didn't
other one that you
notice
can't see right now or in previous episodes. That's you, that picture of you in Tombstone by that artist that I've always loved.
Buck, it's Johnny Ringo.
So I took both of those pictures out and just hung them here and so it would look cool.
Yeah. I was trying to think. I thought I had something else that I wanted to talk about when it came to these pictures. I know. I have 5 boys, and Caitlin is the third. The fourth boy is 22, just turned 22, and he's living with me. He's going to school. He's kind of on his way to becoming a first responder, whatever you call it.
EMT, like
EMT.
paramedic type EMT.
Exactly. Wants to work with a fire department, all that, that type of stuff. And
I love those guys.
Well,
I've seen too many of them in my lifetime.
Well, he's already been in situations where he's been in life and death situations with people. So I have a room at my house that's connected to my house, but it's Caitlin knows the room very well, and it was a little bit of a man cave. I was always back there when I just wanted to be by myself, and when Alex decided to move to Los Angeles and pursue this career, I said, well, come stay with us until you get on your feet, and we'll help you out as best we can, and come stay in that room. And I have all of the photos and artwork that I had gathered, over the last 40 years. Most of it I had in that room, and it's just that I thought it was like so cool, and so he moves in there. And he just starts taking the shit down. I don't want this here. I don't want this here. So I've got this big pile. It's still like it's leaning up against. We have plans to build on to our house, but now there's a pile of about at least 10, or probably 12 photographs that I always thought, well, this is probably worth a little bit of money now. Some of them I bought years ago, and some of them are actually well-known photographers. And just took them all down and said, look here, no, I don't want that one, don't want that one. He did keep one picture that was in there of me that... and I don't have very many pictures of me in my house, but this is a picture that Rick Lynch drew. And Rick Lynch, I wanted to have on the podcast. Rick is BLT is a company that does commercials and posters for movie sites. And over the years, they I'm not sure if they are still, but they 20 years ago, they were the only place in town because he's worked with Spielberg, he's worked with Jim Cameron, he's worked with Scorsese. I mean, he's just worked with everybody. And I want to tell this quick story. And there's maybe did I already talk this thing when I was talking to if
James Cameron, the edit.
Yeah,
you told that one on the Abyss episode about cutting the trailer.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So basically, he cuts trailers and basically there's a business. There's three of them. BLT. He's Rick Lynch, and I wanted to have him on the podcast because he's an artist and very, very, very successful creator of movies, movie posters and trailers now, and so hopefully we can have him on. I'm going to reach out. I had a conversation on an airplane probably a year ago or 2 years ago with Mickey Dolenz. And Mickey Dolenz was in a group called the Monkees. And I did that terrible movie that the Coppola kid directed. And Mickey was in that. And so when I saw Mickey on an airplane, and we weren't sitting next to each other, he was sitting behind me, and I just turned around to say hi to him and remind him that we were in the movie together. And we got talking, and God, what a interesting, fabulously sort of interesting, fun storyteller he is. I'm going to have a chance to talk to him in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully I can get him to do the podcast. I think he's LA based, and so
he had quite a career before the Monkees. When that group was
he
formed.
an actor? Was he an actor?
He'd
Jim?
been in a Disney series. I remember him from something called Circus Boy.
Okay.
Back in the 50s. He was Circus Boy, and he was in a TV series called Mr. Novak about a teacher.
Was it Bob Rafelson who was?
Yeah, it was Bob Rafelson, a couple other guys.
What did Rafelson direct?
5 Easy Pieces.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
He directed. He was one of the producers of Easy Rider. He directed pretty good Jeff Bridges movie. We talked about it in connection with Arnold Schwarzenegger called Stay Hungry.
Right.
And Arnold has a pretty good speaking part in that movie. Well, but playing a bodybuilder.
He kind of they created a group so they could put them on television. Is that
exactly? Yeah, they were supposed to like emulate the Beatles,
right?
And they basically had two really good songwriters, Boyce and Hart, writing all their songs for them, or most of their songs for them. Boyce and Hart were great, pop songwriting duo who wrote songs for a number of artists, and so they had this, really solid. I think Don. Oh God! There was another famous music impresario who had a lot to do with putting these guys together as a group. And I watched, and even now I can hear some of their songs and say, it's, not a bad song,
Yeah,
it's
well,
they,
I think that Mickey was at a theater, a big theater here in town about a year ago, still doing music. And I think it's called the Yamaha Theaters. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, yeah,
Kayla?
yeah.
I believe. Hopefully I'm going to have a chance to talk to him. I'd love to get him on the show because he's just, between he's the one who produced the documentary about Harry Nielsen. And I've told you the story about him dying, and that all comes from Mickey, and so I don't know. I don't want to make any promises, but I'm gonna start. Oh, and by the way, Jim Cameron I reached out to, and I asked him if he would be interested in speaking with me for the podcast. He said, yeah, absolutely, Michael. And as only Jim Cameron said, or as Jim Cameron would say, he basically said, I'll do it now. We can do it if you want to. We can do it now. Or we can wait until Avatar 3 comes out, which is this fall. And that will drive a lot more viewers to this site if it's during that time period. And I'm obviously I didn't think of that because I'm not fucking Jim Cameron. Come on tomorrow,
Yeah, he said.
Wait until the middle of the cycle where everybody's talking about Avatar, and hopefully maybe if he's in LA, I'll be able to get him in here in person.
Oh, cool.
And
I bet he would be in LA around when you get closer to when the movie is going to be released into theaters, because he'll be wanting to do a fair amount of press, I would imagine.
Yeah, he will, and he always does do press.
Yeah.
And the first thing I was going to ask him was about that. No, not for about 30 years. No, 40 years. No, not for about 40 years in the Terminator. No,
that viral clip about Skynet. Yeah.
Yeah, and how like I said before, I mean, he could have come up. It could have been 10 years. Could have been 60 years.
50, could have been 50,
he fucking kind of nailed it, didn't he? It'll be very interesting, because Jim will still be a relatively, and what I consider now that I'm old, a relatively young man in his mid 70s. I think Avatar. I think the whole Avatar franchise is due to be sort of wrapped up in 2033. Okay, so that's 8 years. That would put him at his late 70s. If you look at somebody like Ridley Scott, it'd be very interesting to talk to Jim also about how much, what else he's doing, and what he's doing these days as far as content goes. And anyway,
is there a Avatar 4?
Well, I think there might be. Yeah, I mean there has to be, because the
last I heard, he said he had a script for 4, but I think it was around the time that 2 came out. And he said he had a script for 4, but there hadn't been any kind of final decision about whether it would go into production. But he said he had received really good feedback from Disney regarding it. So, but as from what I understand, none of it had been filmed yet.
So it looks like right now he's planned for 5 Avatar movies. The last one coming out in 2031. But just based on an AI response, it says he's also expressed interest in making Avatar 6 and 7. But he may not direct them. So I think he plans to do 5.
Okay.
Wow. Well, he's going to catch up to fucking Stallone and Rocky. Or Mission Impossible. What I heard, Jim, it's interesting that with Mission Impossible, the very first thing you hear is it's made this much money. It's a big deal. And it turns out this new Mission Impossible is going to have trouble making its money back. Are you aware of that? Those figures at all?
Well, what was the cost on that thing?
That's what it has. The cost was very, very high, obviously, and then there's all the other costs that go into it. And,
Right.
you know, I thought when it came out of the box, you know, it was like, I had already made, you know, $250 million after a week or whatever it was. I just thought, oh my God, just another huge hit for Tom Cruise. And then recently I've read that like the movie was so expensive and it's so expensive to market and blah, 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 that movie is not going to, what is it? What color means it's green? I guess green would be the color that we're talking about.
It's in the red.
It's in the red.
basically.
Yeah, you don't want to be in
its budget is pegged at between 300 and 400 million, with worldwide box office of about 500 million. And you got to bear in mind that the theater owners take about half of box office. So,
and you typically, whatever the budget is for a movie, you typically double it for advertising as well, right? Isn't that kind of the?
I don't know about that. I don't know that they spent double the budget for. I don't know if they spent $1 billion advertising that movie, but they certainly spent a lot.
There was like it was kind of weird. Like they ended up changing the name of the first one, or like the first one came out and it didn't do like as well because this is a part 2, right?
Yeah,
this is a part 2 movie, and so like the first one came out and didn't do quite as well as they thought, so they like changed the name of the second one to imply. Because it's called Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, so it kind of implies that it's the last Mission Impossible movie.
Yeah,
exactly.
Of course.
Never say never again. Yeah.
What was it? Oh, it's the we were talking about Adam Wingard's. They've talked. He and his writing partner, not him himself, but his writing partner, the guy who helped him write Onslaught, or the two of them wrote Onslaught. We're talking about. Face Off,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
and possibly them doing some sort of remake on Face Off. And I'm not sure why I got off onto that, except for that in Face Off, and I haven't seen that movie in a long time, and I don't remember, but one of them gets killed in probably a pretty horrendous way, and he's obviously fucking dead. And I guess towards the end of the movie, he's laying there, and there's a quote from Adam's writing partner that says, well, they didn't put a sheet over the top of the body. So therefore, that
we can take some dramatic license here. Yeah.
Yeah, he caught 15, but that's like them. Oh no, I can't say that. Oh, I can't even move that. Oh well, of course we could have always cut that out.
Curb
it. Actually, Adam called me. Oh, no, he didn't call me. He called to get my telephone number about a week ago, and I was like, oh, great. So as an actor, Jennifer says Adam's assistant called, and she wanted Adam wants your telephone number. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, give it to him, and I got his number, and so right away I'm thinking, okay, well, what is this? And as an actor, everything goes through your mind. From, Michael, it looks like that sequence that you worked on for 3 weeks, and it's not going to be in the movie.
It didn't make the final cut.
It didn't make the final cut. Everything from that to hey, yeah, Michael, I've got this new movie. I
wrote a script just for you.
There you go.
You're the only one who can play the part.
Yeah, and everything in between. It probably was. I'm guessing he's got something put together. He wants to screen for some people, but I don't know. And but I'll let you all know as soon as possible. Because, and by the way, if there's anybody listening to this, I've always been a little bit disappointed by how many people watched his episode. Because, I could be wrong. That's happened once or twice before, but I really have a lot of confidence in him, and I really think Onslaught's going to be a big, fantastic, fun movie. And I think
the business has a lot of confidence in him too. If he's being approached about doing things like rebooting Face Off, his position in the industry is pretty well established at this point. And I suspect that Onslaught will be a pretty well-known movie when it comes out, attract a lot of attention.
Well, and I can guarantee too that when the movie comes out, and it's going to be awesome, people are going to watch it and then they're going to go back and watch that interview. Like, oh yeah, maybe I should have watched that interview. Yeah. Once he starts hitting, they're going to go back for that interview, even though, it's out now. You should go watch it now, but you're definitely going to go back and watch it once Onslaught comes out.
Yeah.
All right. So, listen, we've come to the end of our second half. So the time is running out, Jim. Time is running off the clock, and I have enjoyed this 3 hours with you.
We should bring in the old Carol Burnett sign-off music at this point. We're so glad we spent this time together.
Do I grab my ear and pull my ear for that?
Do that. Yeah.
Wasn't that her way of saying hello or
something like that?
That wasn't goodbye,
something,
was it? We've got to think of some other shows to go out on. But listen, I just want to thank everybody who has listened to us, who seems to be enjoying our conversations. Like I said, now I'm like aware that I can read like your comments, and if sometimes you guys will comment about stuff that like, I want to hear about the Terminator. It's like, well, I just talked about the Terminator for one of them, the entire movie, or Aliens, or Tombstone, or The Abyss, and The Rock, and so you might kind of keep in mind that I've covered most of my movies, big ones, the good ones, but sometimes the bad ones and the ones that are kind of funky are more fun to talk about. It's a lot more like slime that goes on,
Well, I still think you should do an episode on Navy SEALs, like a full one on those, because I know you hate that movie, but a lot of people really like that movie, and it's just a kind of fun movie. I haven't seen it in years, but that's one that I think you can get some stories from. I've heard a lot of people asking about The Art of War recently with Wesley Snipes too. So, and then of course there's K2 people still want to hear about.
Yeah. Well, I can talk more. I don't hate Navy SEALs. I just thought it was an opportunity to do Top Gun.
It's a big disappointment, I would say.
It was
not so much hate as much as you were, because you had higher expectations and aspirations for it. I know.
Yeah, and we have talked a little bit about the beginnings of how I got involved, and what a fucking I got to get that story straight so I can tell it better when I do it by thinking that the director had done one thing when it turned out it was somebody else. He directed that? Okay, I'm in.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that was a good movie. I saw that.
I liked that movie. Oh, he didn't direct it. Oh, I've already signed the contracts. He directed what? Romancing
Never
Stone?
mind.
No, the sequel to Romancing. Anyway,
the one nobody saw. Okay,
I actually saw it and distinctly remember thinking, this is just fucking horrible. And I don't do that very often with movies. Mm-hmm. But I remember the end, some of the set pieces and stuff. Anyway, I digress. But I guess that's what I'm supposed to be doing here, is digressing, right?
I remember the reviews were so bad of that movie, I never bothered to see it. The first was quite enjoyable.
Yeah. Romancing the Stone. Was that Zemeckis?
Yeah, that was Bob Zemeckis, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, our time is up, And Jim, thank you very much.
You got it.
Kaylin, I love you.
I love you too. And to all the people watching this on YouTube, please go and subscribe on Spotify and Apple. Even if you don't listen to it there, it'll help us grow a lot. The more we grow, the bigger we get. The bigger we get, the more fun guests we'll get to have on. So it'll be a treat for all of us.
You got to show me how to do that on my phone, so I can subscribe on Spotify too.
Yeah, subscribe to your own podcast.
Yes,
Michael.
exactly. Well,
I did.
Yeah. All right, Jim. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later.
Then you are doing me